Chapter 1: The Village That Sings in Smoke. There was a village at the end of a winding path, hidden between the folds of amber hills and the arms of whispering pines. It didn't appear on most maps, and if it did, it was only as a smudge, ink blurred like breath on glass. The villagers called it Tsukimori, Forest of the Moon, though no one remembered why. The houses in Tsukimori had roofs of red clay tiles, slanted and moss-soft, and chimneys that puffed smoke like sleepy sighs. Everything smelled faintly of rice straw, wood ash, and old plum jam. The days were slow, and the nights hummed with the gentle breath of lanterns and frogs. Seasons moved in delicate choreography, like dancers careful not to step on sleeping roots. It was a place where time softened its edges. Most people would say nothing ever happened in Tsukimori. They would be wrong. The Ember Child. On the edge of the village, where the stone path turned to packed earth and fireflies blinked in the reeds, lived a girl named Aika. She was 12 years old, with hair the color of chestnuts roasted over Oba-chan's hearth and eyes like river glass, clear but reflecting more than they seemed. Her voice was quiet but certain, and she never shouted unless she was talking to the birds. Aika lived with her grandfather, whom everyone called Gigi, in a crooked wooden house surrounded by persimmon trees and wind chimes that sang even when the wind was still. Her parents had disappeared years ago in what the grown-ups called the fire that wasn't a fire. Aika never knew what they meant by that. She often sat by the river with a notebook in her lap, sketching things she had no memory of seeing. Creatures with ember eyes and tails of smoke, staircases that spiraled up through tree trunks, doors in the side of mountains. Gigi never asked her to explain. He only handed her fresh charcoal sticks and boiled sweet potatoes for lunch. The others. There were other children, of course. Tsukimori was a small village, but it echoed with laughter if you listened between the wind. Haru, the boy with freckles and untied shoelaces, lived 2 houses down from the shrine. He was always running, even when he didn't need to, as though he were trying to catch up to something only he could see. He was brave in the way only fools or children are brave, willing to leap before asking what lay below. Then there was Mio, who braided her hair with tiny bells and spoke only in whispers unless she was singing. She had a soft spot for moths and broken things, and claimed she could hear the thoughts of trees if she pressed her ear to their bark. No one doubted her. Her mother was the village candle maker, and their home always smelled of beeswax and pine. And finally there was Tomo, a boy who never quite fit into his own shadow. He wore gloves even in summer and kept a matchbox in his pocket, though no one ever saw him strike a flame. He said little, but his silences felt full, like he was always listening to something distant and warm. The shrine that glowed. One evening, just as the sky turned the color of smoked persimmon and the cicadas fell quiet, Aika saw something strange. She had gone to the old shrine on the hill, the one adults never visited but never told children not to. The torii gate was faded and half swallowed by ivy, and the stone steps were cracked like old bone. She liked it there. It felt like the air remembered things. As she placed her sketchbook on her lap, she noticed a glow coming from inside the shrine. not the dull orange of sunset, but a rich flickering red, like coals that refused to die. She stepped closer, heart ticking like a sparrow. Inside the shrine was a fox, not an ordinary fox. This one had fur like burning paper and eyes that shimmered like candlelight behind wet glass. It looked at her, tilted its head, and spoke, not with words, but with something like music made of warmth. Aika. She stepped back, clutching her book. You know my name? You are the ember that remembers. What does that mean? But the fox only blinked, and with a soft whoosh, it vanished, leaving only a wisp of smoke and a faint scent of cinnamon and firewood. A secret not yet ready, Aika didn't tell anyone. Not at first. Not even Gigi, who always listened. Not even Haru, who would have believed her in a heartbeat. Not even Mio, who would have written a song about it. And definitely not Tomo, who might have already known. Instead, she went back to the shrine the next night, and the night after, but the fox didn't return. Something had changed, though. The wind felt warmer at night, and the hearth in Gigi's house flared to life without kindling. Her sketches began to move slightly when no one looked directly at them, just a flicker in the corner of the eye. And sometimes, just before sleep, she felt a hum deep inside her chest, like something ancient and ember red was stirring awake. The fire that waits. 1 week after the shrine encounter, the village fire tower rang its bell. Not an alarm, just once, soft and low, like a breath. The last time it had rung was the night her parents disappeared. That was when she heard the voice again, this time from the hearth in their living room. The fire that wasn't a fire still burns beneath the mountain. Someone must remember its name. She turned slowly. There, in the heart of the flame, was the fox, smaller now, a flicker, a ghost of a whisper, but its eyes were the same. You're not real, she whispered. Fire is always real, even when it's forgotten. Emberlight, Chapter 2, The Flame Beneath the Roots. It rained the next morning, not hard, but gently, as though the sky were pouring out memories rather than water. The rain in Tsukimori always smelled of old wood and distant incense, and when it fell, the whole village seemed to hold its breath. Cats curled beneath the eaves, wind chimes rang softly without wind, and smoke curled up from chimneys in long, thoughtful ribbons. Aika awoke to the sound of droplets tapping against her paper window. Her room was warm, lit by the quiet breathing of the hearth. The fire hadn't been fed since last night, and yet it still crackled softly, like it had something left to say. She sat up slowly, the image of the fox still lingering behind her eyes. The fire that wasn't a fire still burns beneath the mountain. Someone must remember its name. She didn't know what it meant, but she could feel something had begun. A thread had been pulled, a door had shifted, and she couldn't go back to before. An invitation from the rain. At breakfast, Chiju made millet porridge with sweet red beans, humming an old song that sounded like it belonged to a time before people knew how to write things down. He didn't ask Aika why she'd barely slept. He simply said, There's a whisper in the smoke today. Listen carefully. That was all. After breakfast, Aika met Haru and Mio by the stone bridge near the koi pond. Tomo arrived last, as usual, half dry from walking without an umbrella. They had meant to play the usual game, following the dragonflies to see where they led, but something in Aika's face told them today was different. She told them about the fox. Not all of it, just enough. Tomo, to her surprise, didn't even blink. The fox with fire in its fur? You've seen it too? She asked. No, he said, but I know what it is. Mio's eyes widened, her bells softly jingling. Is it a yokai? No, Tomo said slowly, or maybe yes. It's something older. My Obayans used to say fire spirits never die. They just sleep inside things, stoves, candles, hearts. Haru looked around, checking the trees. Do you think it followed you? I don't think it needs to, Aika said. I think it lives here. It's part of this place, the hollow beneath the hill. They decided to follow the fox's scent, not with their noses, but with their hearts, as Mio suggested. They walked through wet fields and mossy shrines, past the forgotten watchtower and the place where wild mushrooms made glowing rings under the moon. Eventually, they found themselves in a grove at the base of Mount Yakehana, the mountain that curled behind Tsukimori like an old cat's tail. There, beneath a tangle of roots and rocks, was a hollow in the earth. The space was just big enough for children to crawl through. No one spoke, not even Haru. One by one, they went inside. The Ember Passage. The tunnel smelled like burnt cinnamon and dust. The walls pulsed faintly like breath. Their footsteps made no sound. At the end of the tunnel, they found a cavern, small, round, and perfectly dry despite the rain. In the center was a stone pedestal, and on it sat a tiny flame. It floated an inch above the rock, untouched, unbothered, and impossibly alive. Aika stepped closer. The flame flickered, then stretched, like it recognized her, and then it spoke, not in words, but in a rush of memories. She saw her mother's face, framed in firelight, smiling as she whispered bedtime stories of spirits who lived inside stars. She saw her father tracing symbols in ash on the kitchen table, singing songs she never understood. She saw the night they disappeared, a swirl of wind and red light, a burst of warmth, and then nothing. The flame pulsed once more, and the vision vanished. Aika staggered back, breath shaking. Tomo caught her by the shoulder. You saw it, didn't you? She nodded. It's part of me. The old name. When they returned home, the rain had stopped. Chi-Chi was waiting for her on the porch, sipping tea. You found the ember, didn't you? He asked without looking up. Aika sat beside him. It showed me something, she said. Things I didn't know I remembered. Chi-Chi nodded slowly. There are fires that burn to destroy, he said, but there are others that burn to preserve. This one, this ember, it's an old guardian. Your family has carried it for generations. She turned to him. the air still humming in her chest. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because embers choose when to speak," he said. "Not people." He set down his tea. "Soon, Aika, you will need to learn its name, a true name hidden in the smoke of time." A flicker in the village that night, strange things happened. Candles relit themselves in empty homes. The old paper lanterns by the riverbank swayed with invisible wind, and one of the village's fire watch towers collapsed in a sudden gust, even though the air was still. Rumors began. People whispered about the returning fire, about the Hono no Kami, the old fire god once worshipped in secret shrines. Aika began to feel heat in her palms when she grew nervous. Once, while drawing, the edge of her paper curled from a soft burn. Tomo started spending more time with her, teaching her how to keep a flame inside without letting it escape. He confessed that his family had once served the fire temple before it was buried by landslide and silence. "We're the last ones who remember," he told her, "and remembering has power." The whisper of ash. One evening, Aika woke to find the fox again, this time sitting at the foot of her futon, silent, shimmering, and still. "The name is buried under ash and silence," it said. "You must find it before the mountain stirs again." "Where do I begin?" she whispered. "In the place where fire touched the earth but left no scar, where the songs of your blood still echo in the stones." And then it was gone. She sat up all night sketching what she'd seen. At dawn, her page was full of a symbol burned into the paper without ink. It glowed faintly, like something halfway between fire and memory. Chapter 3. The Boy Who Carried the Cold Flame. The days after the ember's awakening passed like petals on a stream, slow, beautiful, and quietly strange. Summer deepened, and the air in Tsukimori grew heavy with the scent of wild lilies, wet stone, and something new, the faint whisper of soot even on windless days. Aika could feel the ember inside her now, soft as a breath, yet watchful. It stirred with emotion, flaring gently when she was afraid or angry, glowing warm when she remembered things she thought were lost. Sometimes she caught herself mouthing words in an unfamiliar tongue, fragments of the fire's forgotten language, and yet in the warmth, a chill had begun to grow. Tomo's Clovet started with something small. One afternoon, as the four of them sat under the old camphor tree behind the abandoned fire temple, Mio noticed it first. "Tomo," she said softly, "why do you wear gloves when it's so hot?" Tomo, who rarely offered more than what was asked of him, paused. He looked down at his hands. Then, slowly, he peeled off one glove. His skin was pale, but not the pale of ordinary skin. It shimmered slightly, like moonlight on water, and from the center of his palm, a faint mist rose, cool and colorless, the exact opposite of Aika's heat. "It's not just fire that lives beneath the mountain," he said quietly. "Some of us were born with its opposite, the cold flame." That night, Tomo told Aika everything. They sat on her porch as cicadas sang their sleepy chorus, and Gigi stirred sweet azuki paste over the fire inside. "My family's bloodline," Tomo began, "was once bound to the shrine of the Kuri no Kami, the cold flame. a twin spirit to the fire you carry. My ancestors were guardians of stillness, of restraint, of flame that did not burn but held things in place. Aika blinked. But cold flame? Tomo raised his bare hand. A soft light gathered in his palm, blue and quiet, like the glow of deep ice. It didn't flicker, it hummed. This flame doesn't destroy. It remembers, it preserves. It can stop time or hold back death for a breath. Why hide it? Aika asked, watching the pale light swirl. Because people don't trust a fire that doesn't warm, he said. And the last time the mountain stirred, both flames woke at once. Fire and frost clashed, and the village nearly... He stopped. They think the fire took your parents, he whispered. But it didn't. The broken bell. The next morning, the shrine bell rang again, but this time it didn't stop. The sound was wrong, warped, twisted like metal melting too slowly. Villagers gathered in the square, wide-eyed, whispering. Smoke rose from the hill behind the schoolhouse, dark and heavy. Aika, Haru, Mio, and Tomo ran to see. A tree had burst into flames, spontaneously, violently, but the fire was strange. It didn't spread. It burned in a spiral, twisting upward like a question, and in the ashes left behind, there was a shape scorched into the ground. A fox, with a crown of horns. Not the same fox Aika had seen. This one was wrong. The flame that lies that evening the fire returned to Aika's dreams. But it wasn't the soft ember-colored fox. It was larger now, sharper. Its eyes were no longer warm. You are the ember that remembers, it said. But memory is a flame that consumes. What are you? She asked. I am the part you locked away. Then she woke, a letter in the smoke. Gigi gave her a box. I meant to wait until your 13th birthday, he said, but things are moving faster. Inside was an old scroll wrapped in soot-stained cloth. On it was a name, written in fire ink. Your father's last message, Gigi said. He sealed it with his own flame. The scroll burned at her touch, revealing a map, not of Tsukimori, but of beneath it. Hidden tunnels, forgotten shrines, a chamber at the mountain's heart, marked only as the root of fire, and below it, scrawled in rushed, slanted strokes, do not let it wake, bind it with memory, find the boy who carries winter. Aika looked at Tomo, and something in her chest clicked into place. Descent into the forgotten shrine that night, the four of them snuck out, lanterns in hand, hearts pounding. Using the map, they found the entrance behind the weeping stone near the rice fields. A narrow staircase spiraled down into the mountain, each step lined with old glyphs that shimmered at Aika's approach. The further they went, the warmer it grew, but around Tomo, the air stayed cool. When they reached the chamber at the bottom, they found it empty. At first, Then the walls began to glow, symbols lit up, and a whisper filled the room, not with sound, but with pressure. Something ancient had noticed them. The fox revealed from the darkness stepped a creature. At first only eyes, then claws, then fur made of coal and hunger. It looked like the fox, but it wasn't. It was larger, broken, like it had once been many things and then burned away everything but wrath. "Child of the ember," it hissed, "you lit the memory. Now I wake." Flames roared up the walls, but Tomo stepped forward. From his hands bloomed the cold fire. Gentle and unyielding, it wrapped around Aika, shielding her from the burning gaze. "You are not the ember's truth," he said. "You are its shadow." And for the first time, Aika saw Tomo clearly, not just quiet, not just odd, but powerful, a stillness in a world of flame. The turn. The fox lunged. Tomo threw up a wall of frost fire. Aika raised her hand, and the ember inside her flared, sending a wave of light through the chamber. The two fires met, blue and gold, and in the moment of impact, time bent. They weren't in the shrine anymore. They stood in a memory, a village of ash Tsukimori, burned and broken, the sky black, the fields gone. Aika saw herself younger, in her mother's arms, her father standing between two flames, one red, one blue, chanting something in the old tongue. Then silence, a seal drawn in ash, and the two flames bound together, forced into sleep. Until now. Return? Aika gasped and dropped to her knees. They were back in the chamber. The fox was gone, but a single black feather lay where it had stood. Tomo picked it up. "We're not just remembering now," he said. "We're being remembered." Chapter 4. The memory that burns twice. The memory didn't fade. Even after they left the hidden chamber, even after they bathed in cold river water and sat in silence beneath the weeping stone, it stayed with them, like smoke in the folds of their clothes, like a name just on the edge of the tongue. Aika couldn't stop seeing the vision, her mother, eyes shining with something deeper than fear, her father's hands moving in sacred rhythm, the blue and red flames spiraling into one another, locked in that impossible, beautiful seal. And then, the moment the fox shadow had spoken, "You lit the memory. Now I wake." Unsettling calm, the village didn't know. The people of Tsukimori went about their lives, harvesting beans, tying back the last of the summer cucumbers, lighting lanterns at dusk. But the wind had changed. The crows had flown inland, and the fireflies glowed even during the day. The children felt it, not just Aika and Tomo, but Haru and Mio's bells no longer rang. She'd stopped braiding them into her hair. "The trees are quiet now," she said. "Too quiet, like they're hiding something." Haru kept a lookout from the old watchtower, eating less, speaking softer. "I keep dreaming of falling ash," he said. But it's not fire, it's snow, black snow. They all knew something was coming, the fire beneath the field. On the third night after the memory vision, the earth cracked. It began with a distant sound like a drumbeat, muffled by centuries. Then the old rice field near the foot of Mount Yakehana split open with a hiss of steam and a smell like scorched roots. From the fissure came a red glow and a voice, low, ancient, not words but intent. Remember me. Villagers gathered with lanterns, whispering prayers. Gigi stood at the front, silent. Aika felt the ember inside her pulse. This isn't just waking up, she whispered to Tomo. It's calling. The dramatic turn. Mio sung. That night, it was Mio who made the choice. She stood alone at the cracked field, barefoot in the soil, holding a candle in both hands. Aika ran toward her, heart racing. Mio, what are you doing? But Mio didn't flinch. Her voice, usually soft and whispering, rang out across the field like the first wind before a storm. She began to sing. It was an old melody, one Obasan used to hum when braiding herbs, a song of warding, of sleep, of stories not ready to be remembered. The flame in Aika's chest flickered in resonance, but something went wrong. The earth groaned. The flame in the field surged, and from the cracked ground rose a figure. The flame-born. It was not the fox. It was humanoid, tall and coiled in smoke, with fire dripping from its fingertips and a face that shifted like embers in wind. It had no eyes, only two burning hollows. Its voice came from everywhere. You tried to sing me back to sleep. Mio dropped to her knees. Her song caught in her throat. The fire creature raised a hand. Aika screamed, reaching for the ember, calling it forth without knowing how. The light surged from her chest, golden and wild. But it was Tomo who reached Mio first. He stood between her and the flame and raised both hands. Tomo's sacrifice. From his palms bloomed the cold fire, bluer than moonlight, quieter than death. It spiraled around the fire creature, wrapping it in frost, slowing it, holding it. Tomo screamed, not in pain, but in effort. His knees buckled, his gloves burned away. Frost crawled up his arms, lacing into his skin. "Go!" he shouted, but Aika didn't move. She reached into herself, into the ember, and called its name. She didn't know how she knew it, but it came, clear and ancient. Onokus. The fire stopped. The creature paused, turned, tilted its head, and vanished, leaving behind only a circle of blackened grass and a single glowing feather. Tomo collapsed. Aftermath. They carried him to Gigi's home, laid him on the tatami by the hearth. His arms were ice, his breath shallow. Aika sat beside him all night, not sleeping, not blinking. The ember inside her glowed, dull and aching. Gigi placed a kettle on the fire. You called its name, he said softly. Aika nodded. But that was only a piece of it, he said. The rest still sleeps. For now. Aika's grief. The next day, Tomo didn't wake. The villagers called it heat exhaustion, but Aika knew better. His flame had been drained, not destroyed, but buried deep within him, frozen in a place even he couldn't reach. I should have gone instead, she whispered. Haru shook his head. You lit the fire, but... He held it back. Mio, eyes swollen from crying, placed her small bell beside Tomo's pillow, and then, for the first time, Aika cried too. A decision at sunset. Aika climbed the hill. Behind the shrine, she looked at the village, at the way the smoke curled from chimneys, at the sun caught in the water wheel, at the quiet lives people still clung to. She clenched her fists. The ember pulsed. I'm not letting him fade, she said. Behind her, the wind stirred. And in the breeze, she heard the fox's voice again. To save him, you must go where the fire was born, to the root, to the place before memory. Chapter 5. The Flame That Came Home. The path to the mountain's heart was not carved in stone, but in memory. Aika stepped into the morning mist alone. She carried no lantern, only a pouch of rice crackers, Gigi's scarf around her shoulders, and the feather left behind by the flame creature. It pulsed softly like a second heartbeat. Behind her, the village of Tsukimori was still. Dew clung to the rooftops, and the persimmons on the trees hung heavy and orange. She thought of Tomo, still asleep, his breath shallow but steady, thought of Mio's soft voice, now silent, and Haru's hands in his pockets, pretending not to worry. The ember inside her glowed with a calm determination. She was going to bring Tomo back. The mountain speaks. Mount Yakehana loomed above the village like an old guardian. But Aika no longer saw it as ominous. The mountain had always been alive, just asleep. Now she could feel its slow, ancient thoughts. Not cruel, not angry, just watching. As she climbed the winding deer trails, she felt the ember begin to guide her, not with directions, but with intuition. Her steps felt lighter, the wind pushed at her back, birds watched her without fear, and then she found it. A clearing near the peak, ringed with stone pillars half swallowed by moss. In the center, a circle of scorched earth, warm even in the mountain chill. The root of fire, the keeper of the flame. There, in the center of the scorched ring, sat a figure. He looked like a man, but older than mountains. His hair was white smoke, his skin dark like firewood. His eyes were glowing coals. He smiled. I've been waiting, child of the ember. Aika stepped forward, bowing politely. Are you the one who holds the rest of the name? I am the first flame, he said, and the last. I remember all fire, yours, Tomo's, even the fire that sleeps beneath the village. Then you know why I'm here. The old spirit nodded. You seek to warm the boy, frozen by sacrifice. Can I bring him back? The fire spirit looked at her gently, not with strength, not with fury, only with memory and love. The fire memory ritual. The spirit extended his hands. Give me the ember, he said. Let it remember everything. Aika placed her hands in his. Flames wrapped around them, not burning, but illuminating. Scenes from her life flared around her like lanterns. Her mother's song, her father's hands covered in soot, the warmth of Gigi's hearth, the sound of Mew's bells, Haru's laugh echoing through the trees, Tomo's silence, heavy and full of meaning. Tears ran down her face, but she did not look away. The spirit leaned forward, touching her forehead. Now, give that flame to the boy. The descent home Akika returned to the village as night fell, the fire of memory glowing in her hands. She went to Gigi's house, sat beside Tomo, and whispered. Everything, every moment, every step, every name she had remembered. She told him of the mountain, the fire spirit, the way the fox had first appeared. She held his hand and let the ember pass from her palm to his. At first, nothing happened. Then his fingers twitched, and he opened his eyes. Spring returns. Tomo's recovery was slow, but sure. The frost that had crawled into his veins melted in time. His voice came back in whispers. His smile returned, tentative, as though he hadn't used it in years. The village blossomed around them. Flowers bloomed earlier than usual. The river ran clearer. Even the old fire tower was rebuilt, its new bell ringing with a sweeter chime. One evening, Neo sang again, her voice stronger than ever, and Haru told stories to the younger children, pretending he hadn't cried when Tomo woke up. The last visit before summer's end, Aika returned to the shrine. The fox was there, small again, curled in the ashes of an old fire. You did well, it said, eyes soft. Is it over? She asked. No, it said, but it is quieter. The flame remembers now. It will not rage blindly. It will keep you warm. She bowed. The fox stood, brushing soot from its tail. You carry something beautiful, it said. Not power, but presence. Then it vanished, leaving only a trail of sparks that drifted like fireflies. 1 year later, the village of Tsukimori was still hidden between hills and pines. People still cooked rice over wood stoves and dried persimmons on their roofs, but they spoke now, softly, reverently, of the night the fire woke and the children who remembered its name. Aika still drew in her notebook. Tomo still wore gloves, but only when he wanted to. Mio's bells had grown into a whole necklace, and Haru's shoelaces, to no one's surprise, were still never tied. Some nights, when the wind was just right, they climbed the hill and looked out over the lantern-lit village. Do you think the fire sleeps now? Haru would ask. No, Aika would say, smiling. I think it dreams.